Look at this map of any major city: Tokyo, London, San Francisco. Now imagine every single vehicle on those roads driving itself. No human hands on the wheel. No nervous glances at the rearview mirror. Just algorithms making split-second decisions in a maze of pedestrians, cyclists, and unpredictable weather. Here is the question that keeps engineers awake at night. Are we actually ready for this? Because here is the thing. The technology is already here. Waymo has been running fully autonomous taxis in parts of Phoenix since 2020. Tesla ships cars with hardware capable of self-driving on every continent. China has entire districts where autonomous buses are a daily reality. The arms race is real, and it is accelerating fast. But readiness is not just about the hardware. It is about the gap between what the machines can do and what society expects them to handle. Think about the last time your GPS sent you the wrong way down a one-way street. Now multiply that by 1 million decisions per second, with lives on the line. We are standing at the edge of a massive shift. And the question is not whether the technology works. The question is whether we, the people, the laws, the infrastructure, are ready to let it take the wheel. So let us zoom in on the two areas where this shift is happening fastest: self-driving cars and delivery drones. These are not lab experiments anymore. They are on our streets, in our skies, and they are making real decisions every single day. Take Waymo first. By early 2024, their fleet had logged over 7 million miles of fully autonomous driving on public roads. No safety driver behind the wheel. 7 million miles. That is roughly the equivalent of driving around the Earth 280 times. And here is the data point that gets interesting. In those 7 million miles, Waymo vehicles were involved in fewer than 100 collisions that met the reporting threshold. Most of those were rear-end incidents, where a human driver hit the autonomous car from behind. The cars themselves were not causing the crashes. Now compare that to human drivers. In the United States alone, there are roughly 6 million reported collisions every year. That is one crash for every 500,000 miles driven. Waymo's rate, even in the chaotic environment of downtown Phoenix, with its unpredictable pedestrians and aggressive drivers, is significantly lower. The machines are already safer than we are, statistically, measurably, undeniably. But here is the problem: safety is not the same as trust. A few high-profile incidents, like the Uber autonomous vehicle that struck and took the life of a pedestrian in Tempe, Arizona, back in 2018, have created a narrative that sticks in the public mind far longer than any spreadsheet of statistics, set back the entire industry by years. Public perception does not move at the speed of data. It moves at the speed of fear. And this is where Tesla enters the picture, with a completely different approach. Waymo uses LiDAR, radar, and high-definition maps, an expensive sensor-heavy system that costs tens of thousands of dollars per vehicle. Tesla, on the other hand, is betting everything on cameras and neural networks. No LiDAR, no pre-mapped routes, just 8 cameras feeding data into a deep learning model that learns to drive the same way a human does, by watching. Think about what that means. A Waymo vehicle can only operate in areas it has been meticulously mapped. If you take it to a city it has never seen before, it is basically blind. A Tesla, in theory, can drive anywhere a human can. That is the promise. But the trade-off is that Tesla's system has to handle far more uncertainty. And we have seen the results. The famous videos of Teslas mistaking the moon for a yellow traffic light, or swerving toward a median because the lane markings were faded. The system is learning, yes, but learning means making mistakes.
Now here's the real tension. The technology is improving exponentially, but the infrastructure around it is moving at the pace of government budgets and municipal planning. Most cities still use traffic lights designed in the 1920s. Road markings fade and are repainted on cycles that can take years. Construction zones appear overnight with no warning. And the legal framework? It is barely keeping up. As of 2024, only a handful of states in the US have comprehensive regulations for autonomous vehicles. The rest are either silent on the issue or have laws that were written when the idea of the self-driving car was still science fiction. Consider drones.
Amazon Prime Air has been testing autonomous delivery drones since 2013, over a decade, and as of today, they operate in only two small regions, College Station, Texas, and a part of California. The Federal Aviation Administration has been cautious, requiring strict altitude limits, no-fly zones, and human oversight for every launch. The technology is ready. The drones can navigate around buildings, avoid birds, and land with centimeter precision. But the airspace regulations were written for piloted aircraft, not for swarms of autonomous delivery bots. So here is where we stand. The machines are outpacing the rules. The data says they are safer, but the headlines say otherwise. And the infrastructure, the roads, the signals, the legal codes, was built for a world where humans are always in control. We are asking autonomous systems to operate in an environment designed by and for people who make mistakes, break rules, and react emotionally. That is a fundamentally harder problem than building a perfect machine. The technology is not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is everything else. So let us shift our focus from the roads and the skies to a place where the stakes feel even more personal. Healthcare. Because autonomous systems are not just coming for your commute. They are coming for your diagnosis, your surgery, your life. And here's the thing that surprises most people. The medical field has actually been quietly adopting autonomous technology for longer than almost any other industry. Waymo's first autonomous miles were in 2009. But the Da Vinci surgical system? That robot performed its first operation back in 2000, over 2 decades ago. Today there are more than 8,000 Da Vinci systems installed worldwide, and they have been used in over 10 million procedures. 10 million surgeries where a robot's arms, controlled by a human surgeon, made incisions measured in millimeters rather than centimeters. But here is the shift that matters. Those early Da Vinci systems were not truly autonomous. They were tools, highly precise tools, yes, but the surgeon was still in complete control. The robot was just an extension of the human hand. Now we are moving towards systems that can make decisions on their own, and that changes everything. Consider IBM Watson's work in oncology. In the early 2010s, IBM made a massive bet that Watson could revolutionize cancer treatment. The idea was simple. Watson would read every medical paper ever published, millions of documents, clinical trials, research studies, and then recommend treatment plans based on the latest evidence. In theory, it was brilliant. In practice, it ran into a wall. Watson's recommendations often conflicted with what experienced oncologists knew from their own practice. It missed nuances, it struggled with rare cases. By 2018, IBM had scaled back the project significantly. Now, that does not mean the idea was wrong. It means the implementation was premature. And this is where the current wave of AI diagnostics is fundamentally different. Companies like ADOC and Zebra Medical Vision are not trying to replace doctors. They are trained on specific, narrow tasks, reading a CT scan for a brain bleed, or spotting a lung nodule on an X-ray. And in those narrow tasks, they are already outperforming humans. One study published in The Lancet in 2023 found that an AI system detected breast cancer in mammograms with a 1.2% higher accuracy than human radiologists. That doesn't sound like much. But when you are talking about millions of screenings per year, that tiny margin translates into thousands of lives. And this is where it gets interesting. The same technology that makes autonomous driving so controversial, the black box problem, where the AI cannot fully explain why it made a particular decision, is even more problematic in healthcare. If a self-driving car makes a mistake, the consequences are immediate and visible. If an AI diagnostic system misses a tumor, the error might not be discovered until it is too late. And who is liable? The hospital that deployed the system, the company that trained the model, the doctor who overruled or accepted the AI's recommendation. Think about the ethical dilemmas this creates. Imagine a patient with a rare genetic condition. An AI trained on data from millions of patients has never seen this exact combination of symptoms. It flags the case as low risk. The doctor, trusting the system, sends the patient home. 2 weeks later, the patient has a stroke. Who is responsible? The legal framework for this scenario simply doesn't exist yet. Most malpractice laws were written in an era when the only decision maker in the room was a human being. And then there is the data privacy dimension. These AI systems need enormous amounts of medical data to train effectively. We are talking about millions of patient records, imaging studies, genetic profiles, treatment outcomes. In the United States, HIPAA provides some protections, but data breaches are becoming more common, not less. In 2023 alone, over 100 million patient records were exposed in healthcare data breaches. That is 1 in 3 Americans. Now imagine that same data being used to train an AI that will make life or death decisions. The potential for bias, for discrimination, for unintended consequences, it is enormous. Consider what happened with an algorithm used by many US hospitals to predict which patients would benefit from extra care. Researchers discovered in 2019 that the algorithm was systematically under-referring black patients compared to white patients with the same level of illness. Because the algorithm was trained on historical healthcare costs, and the system had spent less money on black patients due to long-standing disparities in access. The algorithm learned the bias. It did not create it, but it amplified it. So here is the uncomfortable truth. Autonomous systems in healthcare hold incredible promise. They can work around the clock. They never get tired. They can process millions of data points in seconds. But they inherit the flaws of the data they are trained on and the systems they are embedded in. And the ethical, legal, and social infrastructure to manage those flaws is still being built. We are asking machines to make decisions that even the best human doctors struggle with. And we are doing it in an environment where the cost of a mistake is not a dented bumper or a delayed package. It is a life. So here is where you come in. We have walked through the data, the dilemmas, the promises, and the pitfalls. But this is not just a story about technology. It is a story about all of us living through this transition. So I want to hear from you. What is your gut feeling about autonomous systems? The ones driving our cars, diagnosing our health, flying over our homes. Do you trust them? Do you fear them? Have you had a close encounter with a self-driving vehicle or an AI in a hospital setting? Share your experience or your biggest concern in the comments below, because this conversation is not happening in boardrooms or labs alone. It is happening in our cities, our hospitals, and our homes. And your voice is part of how we figure out where we go from here. Now let us zoom out across the map, not just across a single city, but across entire regions and economies, because the impact of autonomous systems is not evenly distributed. It is hitting some places and some people far harder than others, and the geography of that disruption tells us a lot about whether we are truly ready. If we look at the United States, the epicenter of autonomous vehicle testing is concentrated in a handful of Sunbelt cities: Phoenix, Austin, San Francisco, Las Vegas. Warm weather, wide roads, and relatively permissive regulations have made these places the proving grounds. Meanwhile, cities in the Rust Belt and the Northeast, with their aging infrastructure, narrow streets, and harsh winters, are barely on the map. The technology is being shaped by the places that welcome it, and that means it is being optimized for environments that look nothing like, say, downtown Boston or a snowy Detroit winter. This geographic bias is not just about cars, it is about jobs, manufacturing and logistics. The sectors where autonomous systems are already making the deepest cuts are concentrated in specific regions. Think about the warehouse clusters around Memphis, the distribution hubs in the Inland Empire east of Los Angeles, the automotive plants in Michigan and Ohio. These are the places where the first wave of automation is hitting hardest, and the data is stark. A 2023 study from the McKinsey Global Institute projected that by 2030, between 12 and 15 million workers in the United States alone could be displaced by automation. That is roughly 1 in 10 workers, and the losses are not spread evenly. In logistics, autonomous forklifts and sorting systems are already reducing the need for warehouse labor. In manufacturing, robotic arms have been replacing assembly line workers for decades, but the pace is accelerating. A single robotic welding system can do the work of 4 human welders, and it never takes a break, never asks for a raise, never files a workers' comp claim. Now, here's the part that rarely makes the headlines. Automation does not just eliminate jobs, it transforms them. And the transformation often creates a skills gap that is brutal for the workers caught in the middle. Consider the case of long-haul trucking. There are roughly 3.5 million truck drivers in the United States. Autonomous trucks are not going to replace all of them overnight. The technology is still years away from handling the chaos of urban delivery. But the first applications are likely to be on long, monotonous highway routes. A human driver might still be needed for the first and last mile, but the middle stretch, the 8-hour haul across the desert, could be handled by a machine. That means the job changes. The driver becomes a monitor, a supervisor, a backup. The pay structure shifts, the training requirements change, and the workers who have spent 20 years perfecting a set of skills suddenly find themselves in a role they didn't sign up for. Think about the retraining challenge. The current system of workforce development in the United States is fragmented, underfunded, and slow. Community colleges offer programs in robotics maintenance and AI ethics, but enrollment is low and completion rates are lower. A study from the National Skills Coalition found that only 1 in 5 workers who lose their job to automation successfully retrains for a new role within 2 years. The rest either take lower-paying jobs, drop out of the workforce entirely, or rely on big work that offers no stability. And this is where the global picture adds another layer. Look at the map of East Asia, specifically China, Japan, and South Korea. These countries are investing in automation at a scale that makes the United States look hesitant. China installed more industrial robots in 2023 than the rest of the world combined. Their government has a national strategy called Made in China 2025 that explicitly targets robotics and AI as pillars of economic growth. The result is a manufacturing sector that can produce goods with fewer workers, at lower cost, and with higher precision. Meanwhile, countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Ethiopia, which built their economic models on cheap labor for textile and assembly work, are watching their competitive advantage erode. When a robot can sew a shirt faster and more accurately than a human, the wage differential between Dhaka and Detroit starts to matter a lot less. So we are facing a twin challenge. In wealthy countries, the question is how to retrain millions of workers whose jobs are being automated. In developing countries, the question is how to build an economy at all when the traditional path, low-cost manufacturing, is being closed off by machines that never sleep and never demand a raise. Now, let us bring this back to the education system, because that is where the long-term solution has to live. The current model of education was designed for the industrial age. You go to school for 12 years, learn a set of skills, and work for 40 years using those skills. That model is breaking down because the half-life of a technical skill is now estimated at about 5 years. By the time a student graduates from a 4-year engineering program, half of what they learned in their first year is already outdated. Think about what that means for curriculum design. Some schools are experimenting with modular, stackable credentials. Micro-degrees that workers can earn in months, not years, and that stack toward a larger qualification over time. Georgia Tech's online Masters in Computer Science, launched in 2014, now enrolls over 10,000 students, many of them mid-career professionals looking to upskill. But programs like that are the exception, not the rule. Most community colleges and trade schools are still operating on semester schedules and fixed curricula that change slowly. And there is a deeper cultural issue here. We tend to think of automation as something that happens to other people, to factory workers, to drivers, to cashiers. But the next wave is coming for white-collar jobs too. Legal document review, accounting audits, medical imaging analysis, even some forms of journalism, these are all being automated. A 2024 report from Goldman Sachs estimated that 2/3 of current occupations could be partially automated by AI. That does not mean the jobs disappear entirely, but it means the nature of the work changes. And the people who are most resistant to that change are often the ones who think they are safest. So here is the uncomfortable reality. The technology is not waiting for us to catch up. It is not pausing while we figure out retraining programs or update school curricula. It is accelerating. And the gap between the pace of technological change and the pace of social adaptation is widening. We are asking workers to adapt to a world that is changing faster than any previous generation has ever faced. And we are giving them tools, outdated education systems, underfunded retraining programs, and a safety net that was designed for a different era. And this is where the map becomes something more than just lines on a page. It becomes a reflection of our collective readiness, or lack of it. Because the geographic concentration of autonomous testing in a few Sunbelt cities is not an accident. It is a signal. It tells us that the technology is being optimized for the path of least resistance, not for the hardest problems. Phoenix has wide streets, predictable weather, and a regulatory environment that says, "Come on in." Boston has narrow, winding roads, snow-covered lane markings, and a city council that has spent years debating whether to even allow autonomous vehicle testing. The gap between these two cities is not just a gap in infrastructure. It is a gap in political will, in public trust, in the basic social agreement about what we want these machines to do. Think about what that means for the future. If autonomous systems are only deployed in places that welcome them, then the benefits, safer roads, faster deliveries, cheaper goods, will also be concentrated in those places. The people who live in Phoenix get the convenience and the safety improvements. The people who live in Buffalo get nothing. And that is not a bug in the system. It is a feature of how technology adoption works when it is driven by market forces rather than public policy. Now here is the part that really keeps me up at night. The data on job displacement is not evenly distributed either. A 2023 study from the Brookings Institution found that the workers most vulnerable to automation are disproportionately young, male, and non-white. They work in manufacturing, warehousing, and transportation, sectors where autonomous systems are already making inroads. And these are the same workers who have the least access to retraining programs, the weakest social safety nets, and the fewest alternative job options in their communities. The automation wave is not going to hit everyone equally. It is going to hit the people who are already the most economically fragile. Consider the city of Memphis. It is a logistics hub, home to the world's busiest cargo airport and a massive concentration of warehouses. Autonomous forklifts and sorting systems are already being deployed there. A single warehouse that used to employ 200 people now runs with 50. The remaining workers are expected to monitor the machines, troubleshoot errors, and handle exceptions. The job has changed from physical labor to technical oversight, and the pay has not gone up. It has actually gone down in some cases, because the skills required are now more specific and less transferable. A worker who spent 10 years operating a forklift by hand now has to learn a software interface. If they cannot, they are out. And here is the thing that rarely gets discussed. The education system is not just slow to adapt, it is actively misaligned with what the economy needs. We spend billions of dollars on K-12 education, but the curriculum was designed for a world where most jobs were in manufacturing or agriculture. We still teach algebra and Shakespeare, but we do not teach data literacy, systems thinking, or how to work alongside an AI. The skills that will matter most in an automated economy, critical thinking, adaptability, emotional intelligence, are barely mentioned in most school district strategic plans. Think about the disconnect. A student graduating high school in 2024 has spent their entire life in a world where smartphones and social media are ubiquitous. They are digital natives, but they have almost no formal training in how algorithms work, how data is collected and used, or how to evaluate the output of an AI system. They can scroll TikTok for hours, but they cannot explain why a recommendation engine suggested a specific video. That is a literacy gap that has real consequences. When those same students enter a workforce where AI is making hiring decisions, evaluating their performance, and even deciding whether they get a promotion. So here is the synthesis. We have the technology. We have the data that says it is safer, faster, and more efficient than human systems in many narrow domains. But we do not have the social infrastructure to absorb it. Our laws are outdated, our schools are misaligned, our retraining programs are underfunded, and our public discourse is driven by fear and headlines rather than data and deliberation. The machines are ready. The question is whether we are. And that question does not have a simple answer. It depends on where you live, what you do for a living, and how much power you have to shape the rules.
For a software engineer in San Francisco, the autonomous future looks like an exciting frontier of innovation and opportunity.
For a warehouse worker in Memphis, it looks like a slow-motion dismantling of everything they have built their life around. Both perspectives are real. Both are valid, and both are happening at the same time, in the same country, under the same set of technological forces. We are not ready. Not because the technology is broken, but because the systems we have built to manage change are broken. And fixing those systems is going to take a lot more than better algorithms. It is going to take a fundamental rethinking of how we educate, how we regulate, and how we support the people who are caught in the transition. That is the real challenge of autonomous systems. Not the engineering, the humanity. So here we are, standing at the intersection of what is possible and what is ready. The machines can drive, diagnose, and deliver. They are faster than us, safer than us in narrow tasks, and they never get tired. But the gap between technological capability and social readiness is not closing. It is widening. The question we started with, are we ready, does not have a clean yes or no answer. It is a question we have to answer every day, with every regulation we pass, every curriculum we update, every retraining program we fund. Readiness is not a destination. It is a continuous act of adaptation, and that is where you come in. This channel exists because these questions matter, because the future is not something that happens to us. It is something we build, debate, and shape together. If you want to stay ahead of the curve on the technologies that are reshaping our world, hit that subscribe button for future frontiers. We will keep bringing you the data, the dilemmas, and the deep dives that help you make sense of the change happening all around us. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.